Okay, they're American, but you just can't hear it.
You mean when I receive emails?
No, like,
Just hope meetings there.
when you sign on to your
I don't
phone.
sign it.
We've had lunch at this
I
many
need to know when
times.
to sign in.
I never signed in.
How do you know it's signed
He still waits
how
for
do you know
Fridge
that?
Because I use it on this.
Yeah, but if you signed in.
I don't sign
I
in.
remember re-signed in too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we
How do I
discovered that
access?
about the wonderful city property. If anybody's having a bad day, the Legion has fridge in the basement.
Two.
Is this an Android?
No.
Of course, it's rain day, get out there and play. Oh, it's okay.
Oh, well,
I went through it, yeah.
There's business. There's business.
It's very busy. 4 weeks in last week, March, first week of April, which is first week.
You can't see it.
When I changed the password, I changed it to.
You know, it used to be you knew when they were shutting down 2 weeks.
CJ,
We're in 2
but
weeks,
wait.
July,
Right.
now it's like, but
I
everybody
mean,
else seems to
as
be
long as I
running.
can access email.
Yeah,
And I can actually.
right, but we're gonna be getting that off our phones in a little
Invitation
while.
took us now.
You can just stop it.
We're not gonna be able to access it.
I'll be under a car, people walk in, especially if race or anything, cause all neons come on their own time.
Cause,
I'll be under a car, so you go by and thinking, who's in my car? I was actually just out scoping ideas for my dad's garage.
Actually, I'm gonna-
Yeah, nice, your dad's out looked at it a few times, yeah.
So we'll have a separate phone.
Flash the picker.
I don't know if everybody will, I know I
Oh,
have.
my shop's full of these, let me hate
We'll have
days, man.
separate phones.
Yeah.
Because your
Mine's all old original porcelain, so it's
phone,
not the remodel.
Jake doesn't want anybody's email no more on their
Cool stuff.
This is just for security. I just took email on this last.
Oh, was it? Should-
Yeah.
Yes, which that could,
Oh, I do too.
but that comes out.
Emails for other stuff I do, but this is not city. Oh, yeah.
We can get a grant for that, right?
We're getting underway in about 15 seconds.
Yeah, that's a COVID thing right there. Hey, Lisa.
5, 4, 3. Yeah. Good evening and welcome to the Defiance City Council meeting for this evening, March 7th, 2023. This evening, Pastor Tyson Knopfsinger from the First Church of God on Carter Road is our guest pastor to open us up in prayer. Thank you for being our guest this evening, Pastor Knopfsinger.
Thank you all. Yeah, thanks for having me and thanks for all that you do to serve our community. Let's go ahead and pray together. God, we thank you for this evening and for all the business that's before us. We just put it all before you here tonight and we ask for wisdom. We ask that we would see things as they are and that there would be unity amongst the team on how to proceed, that there would just be clarity. And we just ask that you would continue to guide our community. I thank you even just in the last week or two for the job that the team in Defiance did and getting some drugs off the street. And we just thank you for things like that. We thank you for all the good things going on in Defiance and just pray that you would continue to guide us and help us as we look to serve this community. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. This meeting is called to order. Let the record show that all the members of council are present this evening. Would you stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get underway this evening, we have a couple special guests. First up, we have Lisa Weiner, the Executive Director of the Fort Defiance Humane Society. Thanks for being our guest this evening.
Thanks for having me. I wish I had something more interesting to talk about than feral cats, but here we are. So we talked last fall, I think, it was before the holidays, about a TNR program. I've been working with your executive committee as well, and we have that scheduled for April 17th. So that is on the books, and we have a unit coming in, a mobile unit coming in called the Rascal Unit. And they're kind of an all-encompassing surgery suite, if you will, an RV on wheels. And they will be doing all of the surgeries. So that's all set. We also have, since we spoke the last time, we also have all of the traps ordered through a local vendor, so that's on the way and in the process. So a couple things we need to be thinking about as a combined group, and that is our communication to the community, how we want to communicate this out, when, how, all that good stuff. And then the big thing that's really going to make this a success is volunteers. We need volunteers. I don't personally have the staff or the resources to be doing something of this magnitude. We've got some folks that will certainly help out, myself included, leading the effort, but we would definitely need volunteers. I'm hoping some of you folks will be willing to volunteer and help out. And then we'll also be looking to the community to volunteer. This is something that I think you all have done a great job in approving funds and getting this really kicked off. This is the first time this has ever been done in Defiance. So it's, the citizens have asked for solutions and you've provided that. And so with that, we need volunteers to help us really take it across the finish line. We also have, I have it scheduled in September for a second one. We'll see how the first one goes. We can always cancel that if need be, but at least we're on the books because these folks book up very quickly. So I will throw it kind of back out to you guys. I mean, my recommendation for communication would be to start doing that both on our combined Facebook pages and maybe current events, things like that. Getting a united communication out to the public, probably within the next week or two at the latest. And then with that communication, asking for volunteers. Volunteers, where they're gonna be needed, just to kind of give you a rough idea of how this looks. So 17th is a Monday, so that's the day that the Rascal Unit will be here, doing the actual surgeries. The day before that on Sunday is when we need folks to come out and help trap. So we will have all the traps in the location that we secure for where we're gonna do all the surgeries, which we're working on that today. We'll have all the supplies there, all the traps, we've gotta label traps, we've gotta do all the paperwork. So there's a fair amount involved with it. We'll try to have all of that done ahead of time, but as people come, we'll be training them on how to set the traps if they don't know how. They will be kind of checking them out, if you will, taking them to their locations, and then hopefully the cats that they trap, they bring back the next morning. We do all the surgeries for them. We care for them overnight, so they're gonna be in our care for 24 hours. So again, we need volunteers to help with that. Help with feeding, help with just, general cleaning and things like that. And then the next day, having those folks that drop them off, come back, pick them up, and take them back and release them where they found them. So that's kind of the general, it's kind of a 3-day process overall. Questions?
Mr. Waxler?
I had a couple. Do you have a certain spot you already got designated to be picking these, or do you have areas you're working on, or no?
There's areas that we're aware of. There's certainly, some highly populated areas that we're gonna work on. I'm gonna ask the public as well. If there's I'm sure there's plenty, that we're not aware of. So we'll wanna target some specific areas within the city for the colonies, what we would call. And then I would expect we're gonna get the individuals that say, I've got 2 or 3 around my house that I wanna try to get fixed.
And my next question is, I know when I know some people in town that's done this already, and they crop the ears.
Yes.
Okay.
Clip the ears, yep.
Now, I know during COVID, there was a lot of people got animals. and now they don't want them because they're not home, so they're releasing them.
Nobody knows that better than I.
Okay, look, I understand that. My question is though, if you have a home pet and you took it out and got fixed, they don't crop the ear.
Correct.
So how are you gonna know?
You won't know that necessarily if it, and that's gonna happen. You're
Yeah.
gonna get those that are trapped. When they go to do the surgery, one, the cat's probably gonna be more friendly or not feral. Two, they're gonna see a surgery scar. So if they see a surgery scar and or a tattoo, a lot of vets or
I mean, there's no way of telling the public what to be called. Okay, that was my question,
No.
you know, cause
yeah, it's gonna happen.
you have 50 of them show up, it's already been fixed, but somebody turned them back,
Right.
you know, I mean.
Yeah, or they're just indoor, outdoor cats
Right, yeah.
that went in the trap. And yeah, that's gonna happen.
Okay,
It certainly can happen, for sure.
all right, thank you.
Mr. Rusty?
Volunteers, approximately how many do you think you would need?
Well, for trapping, that's gonna be kind of how broad of an area we go into. I've got volunteers already, they're gonna help us at the shelter target some key areas that we already know are highly populated. One being, the area behind Aldi's, the trailer park behind Aldi's, that's heavily populated.
Spruce Street?
Spruce Street, yep, Ayersville Avenue, Ottawa Avenue. There's some key areas that we'll definitely target, and I've got a group that will kind of target those. Other volunteers, it's gonna be how broad of an area we want. For the kind of caring of the animals, we're gonna need probably about 10 people to kind of help with that, assuming we get 70-ish cats that we're trapping.
And how much time would they be consumed? In other words, let's just say there's a group that volunteer, are they gonna put in like 3 hours, 4 hours?
Yeah, it would be, so the day of surgery, you know, that's gonna go on throughout the day on that Monday. We'll certainly before we leave, before, you know, when the cats are all done, we'll wanna go through, they'll be all kind of awake at that point, so we'll wanna feed and water and clean up anything at that point. Then we'll come back the next morning, so it's gonna be probably 3-hour increments, I would say on average.
Mrs. Crutch?
How many traps would we have?
90.
90, and we're gonna set all 90 of those traps. And if we have 90 cats come in, are we going to reset those traps again, or?
No,
we'll
this
do
is just
90?
one day,
Okay,
yep.
one day.
So we'll set them on Sunday. Whatever we get comes in on Monday and gets surgery. And then Tuesday we release them
And
back.
of those 90 cats, we could have 30 of them that are already fixed
Good,
or whatever.
yep, you sure can.
Okay.
And you might not get every trap full either. I mean,
Right.
they estimate, the TNR folks say, if you wanna set 90, you might get 60 to 70.
Okay.
It
You
just
may get some coons and stuff, you never
You
know.
you will, and we have to instruct people on that as well, cause we don't want those.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
and I'll have written instructions for everybody
Mhm.
on, you know, how to set the traps and kind of the do's and don'ts, if you will.
Is there a place that we're going to take the cats then after they're setting the traps, or do they stay in the traps the whole night, or?
They'll stay in that night and then the people that are volunteering will bring them in the morning.
In the
Yep.
traps?
Yep, in the traps, and they go right, kind of, they're in a staged area and they go right into the surgery line, if you will.
Mhm.
And then we'll put them in the building that we secure, they'll be in there, temperature controlled. Once they start waking up, you can give them food and water, you know, and obviously cleaning up after them, and then they'll be there for the night. Come back in the morning, do the same thing, and then we'll take them back to their habitat.
Thank you.
Mr. Rusty?
I think you had somebody else before me.
Oh, she asked this question.
She beat me to it, it's okay. Jill, ask it, you're good.
I think you might have already answered this. Let's just say, I picked up a kitten.
Mhm.
And, it's gonna be my pet.
Mhm.
And without going to the mass expense of going to the, shelter and getting, the large cost for, getting
Spay,
fixed or whatever. Can I basically use this time period to basically take the cat down to get it taken care of? And
That's really up to you all. I think you need to expect that it's gonna happen, and it's probably not gonna happen with people being forthcoming. with that. They're just gonna come in with it's a stray. And here's part of the reason why. All the vets are booked up. Our low-cost spay and neuter clinic, which is a quarter of the price of anywhere, we're booked through July. We stopped taking appointments because we're booked out so far. And so, it's hard to find resources right now. So I think we need to be realistic and expect that people are going to do that. My personal opinion is, we have the resources, we have the people there to do the surgery. Any cat that gets fixed is one less we have to worry about. So, I mean, that's just my personal opinion. We already have everything in place, so it's pretty minor from a cost perspective.
I pretty much agree with what you're saying. I guess, I read on Facebook where somebody's reaching out to the community of where I can be a responsible pet owner, but at the most minimal cost that I can get.
Yeah.
And if we can advertise that if they keep the cat sheltered until we go through this process, then they're gonna have a good cat.
The other thing we can do possibly, because here's the trick, you don't know what you're gonna get, right? We could set 90 traps and get 20. Probably not, but you just don't know. It's kind of a crapshoot. I think we could offer.
Crapshoot or cat shoot?
Crap, CR or?
Cat shoot. So I think we could offer that to the community, that if there were spots available the day of, and again, we're not gonna know till the day of, and they wanted to come and bring their cat, their, indoor, outdoor cat, whatever. And that's up to you guys, and if that's something you wanna charge them for, that they would pay, it's still very low cost, I think it's $60 total for everything, and that's for rabies shots and ear clipping and all that. So, I mean, that's kind of up to you guys, what you think you wanna do there.
Just follow up on that, if that happens, then are you gonna go ahead and tip them that way, their ear that way when we do it again, if they get caught?
Yep.
You already, okay.
Mhm.
So the people need to know that part of that process is they're gonna have a cat with a tipped ear.
Mr. Esty?
I think this go around, just my opinion, but I think it probably getting council's opinions on this, but my opinion is we're already paying for it, it's already in the books. That if there is somebody in the community that does want to take advantage of this, one full go around at this time, getting as many cats as we can, I mean, that to me is a win-win situation for the homeowner plus ourselves on the cats,
As long as we only paid for it, 100 to, what's that price
What's
we
the
paid?
number?
It's on done next week.
As long as it don't exceed what we're already, we wanna do the ferals first,
Right.
Maximize the efforts that's being used and get maximum benefit of what we've.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, Mr. Hancock?
Yes, Lisa, could you explain a little bit about the crew that's coming with this rascal unit? Is there like one vet and then 3 staff, or?
I believe they have 2 vets and then multiple technicians, so the technicians really stage the animal and get it ready to
Prepping
go. Yeah, and the spays and neuters, honestly, they don't take very long. I mean, even at our clinic, they're pretty quick. It's you spend more time prepping and getting them put under and all of that. So the actual procedures vary, especially for neuters. I mean, it is a minute to get them neutered. It's very quick. So they can get a lot through in a day without issue.
Thank you.
Mr. Mast?
I think Mr. Rusty's got a great point, that if we can use this, I mean, obviously we wanna get as many feral as possible prior, but if there's open space up to that 90 mark, I think I'd love to see us be able to get people in there to,
Sure.
especially if they have indoor, outdoor cats
Mhm.
that they're letting run around. I mean, if we can get 90 cats spayed and neutered in one shot, it's.
Yeah, and I don't see why we couldn't, again, you don't know until the morning of what you're gonna have. But we could either have a communication that goes out and, make sure people know that we're gonna give them a heads up of how many spaces we have available. And maybe they don't come until later in the day because we're gonna take care of the feral cats first, so maybe they're kind of the tail end.
So if we see what we get in.
Yep.
For the program.
Yep.
And then maybe give the Facebook shout out and say, you know, tell people to stay tuned, keep an eye out. And we'll let the word out if there's room.
Mrs. Kutch?
What are the hours for Monday? Then what time will it start?
Well, we're gonna be out early picking up traps, and I believe the Rascal unit gets here at 10, I wanna say. Like 10 to 4, and then taking
They
care of
can
them
get
after.
90 done in 10 to 4.
Oh, yeah.
You said, don't they?
Our
know.
Dr. Pedden, literally at our place, she did 130 at one point.
Okay.
Yeah, if you got them staged and you've got the technicians doing it all, it's a pretty quick production line.
Cool.
Mr.
In
Hagan.
addition with this, do you need any supplies?
We do.
Do you
We do.
need cardboard or paper or?
We do, and actually, our friend Todd back there has put me in contact with somebody at the Crescent News, so we can use some recycled paper, because we definitely need newspapers. I'll probably put a post out on Facebook as well, because we usually get a lot of folks that will donate that. We do have a list of supplies that we will need, but that is all part of what you've already allocated for the spending, so it's gonna be cleaning supplies, obviously, things like rubber gloves, disinfecting wipes, garbage bags, paper towels. We will need to order cat food as well. That's gonna be for, not only for caring for them, but for the traps. So we're gonna order, the needed amount of kind of the disposable little cups that they can just open, put in the trap and be done. But we will need, obviously, food and such for when we're caring for them. Not a huge supply, but that's part of it, but that's all in the budget, so that shouldn't be an issue.
Mr. Rusty?
Are we gonna need anything like for the volunteers or for the people that are doing surgeries, like water, food, coffee, those types of things?
Yeah, I think, a couple of cases of bottled water, no big deal. I think we should definitely do lunch for them as well. There's also a gentleman that is in the regional district of the Humane Society of the United States that will be stopping in as well. He's volunteering. He's gonna volunteer his day, to help us. So yeah, I think that would certainly be welcome. Again, it's not gonna be a huge crowd of people, just a small group.
Sounds good.
I have one last one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Will you be stopping back before the day to give us an update of something that we need to do?
I sure can.
And then find out how many volunteers you might have already had, how many more you need,
Yep.
and do a shout out one last time.
Yep, will do.
That'd be great.
I have a couple things. Couple things, Lisa. First, thank you for undertaking this. It's something you and I have talked about for a couple of years now. So it's here.
It's here.
Congratulations. What if we catch a raccoon?
That I would instruct the folks just to open the trap and let it back out.
Okay. And then we've discussed, but I don't know that we ever decided, and maybe you have independently, which is fine, about a deposit on the traps.
We've talked about it, and no, I haven't made a decision. I mean, it's another topic out there. I could argue either way. What we do, just so you guys know, we have live traps that people wanna rent, so we rent them. When we rent them, we charge $50, we give them $40 back when they bring it back. That makes them bring it back. We have that potential, even though these will be tagged and all of that, we have that potential that people are going to, even if they follow through, bringing the animal to us, taking it back and releasing it, you've got the option, well, I should say they have the opportunity not to bring it back.
You're gonna have their license and make them sign for them, correct?
We could.
I mean, you gotta do something to know who's got them.
Yeah, well, yes, we'll have all their names and all of that, but I mean, that potential is there,
Yeah.
that they're not gonna bring it back, or at least maybe not even in a timely manner. So that's something we kinda kicked around is do we charge a deposit? You still have the issue, for example, if we go out, my group goes out and sets some of these traps for I'll say the colonies. there's a potential people are gonna walk up and take the traps too. I mean, that's just short of nailing them down, that's a potential. Even if they're marked and everything else, that potential's there.
I don't really think we can charge a volunteer for a trap. I mean, I got a problem with that,
It's-
but we gotta have some way of,
People, I mean, that it could possibly deter people from
My,
wanting to do it.
my thoughts were this, I mean, I have given it some thought since we spoke about it a few weeks ago, is simply, let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
Let's trust people to do the right thing. I do agree with Mr. Waxler, we should at least get at a minimum a name and address.
Yes,
Whether you wanna go through driver's license and all that stuff, that's entirely up to you, but I mean, this whole program is based upon trust.
right.
I think if somebody volunteers, they're not gonna steal our
We're
truck.
putting up
I mean, they ain't gonna come
taxpayer
out now,
dollars
but
here
I wouldn't think so.
to do something, and it's, I think, up to everyone if they
If they
want
do stay
to
home, they gotta answer the downstairs.
somehow misuse those funds, but, so that's my recommendation, and if things, you know, if we put out 90 traps and only get 30 back, then before we undertake this the next time, we're gonna have to
Lesson
rethink
learned,
things.
right?
Yep, so that was my thoughts.
Mr. Hancock?
Well, just mentioned we could barcode the traps or put a chip in them as well as the cats after we feral them to see where they go.
Microchip everything, right?
Microchip everything.
Get Jake on
That's
that.
fair.
You gonna pay for
Just-
that, Jim?
just
That's what I was
saying.
gonna ask him. That's what he's buying.
Coming out of your pocket.
Just saying.
Steve. All right, do we have any other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thanks for being our guest.
Absolutely. Let's, fingers crossed, this goes as planned. Thank you, guys.
Also this evening, we have as a special guest, Ralph Hahn, who's here to address us. Thanks for being our guest, Mr. Hahn.
Mr. O'Donnell, that's for your reference.
Thank you.
Good evening. Ralph Hahn, 901 Wilhelm Street. It will soon be 3 years already since council approved the ordinance allowing the use of LSVs and USVs in Defiance. And LSVs are low-speed vehicles and USVs are underspeed vehicles. There have been no accidents and no problems that I am aware of. I'm here tonight to ask for an expansion of the ordinance to include areas of 35 mile per hour that are not highways. And let me give you just a couple examples of that. If I were to visit friends in what I call South Defiance, south of the Eau Glaze River, I would travel Hopkins Street, cross the bridge to Summit Street, and I'd take Summit Street south to Carnes, and take Carnes to Cleveland Avenue, because that is the only way. Once I get to Cleveland Avenue, I gotta turn around and go back, because Cleveland Avenue is 35 mile per hour. And the same in reverse, if, say I lived in the Ginner Road area and I wanted to come downtown, I could take Ginner Road to Greenler and take Greenler to Cleveland Avenue. And once I got to Cleveland Avenue, I turn around and go back. Can't go. South Jackson is another example. From Dottier Street to the reservoir is 35 mile per hour. So can't visit the reservoir area in my LSV if I wanted to. Those are just a couple examples. The state of Ohio revised code allows use of LSV and USVs on any street with an established speed limit not greater than 35 mile per hour. So simply put, all I'm asking is council to approve an expansion of our ordinance that has already been approved by the state of Ohio and allow use of 35 mile per hour areas that are not highways. That's it.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Hahn?
I have one, just for the mechanics of this, because we do allow them on certain state highways of 25 miles per hour less. Do you want that to remain the same? Is that part of your request?
Yeah, I wouldn't change any of the 25 mile per hour language that we had in the ordinance because it seems like it's working very well. I'm just trying to see if we can expand on our ordinance so that folks can get to other areas of the city that they can't legally do now.
Mr. Engel?
Coming in on 66, coming across the bridge, do you consider that one downtown a highway?
66 across the, you
Across the bridge
talking
coming in
South
town.
Jefferson?
No, if you're on North Clinton Street, South Clinton Street, you consider that a highway?
South Clinton Street.
North Clinton Street, coming from 66.
We, by our ordinance, Mr. Engel, we can cross the Purple Heart Bridge and immediately exit the first one. No, not Clinton Street. No. We can cross the Purple Heart Bridge, Clinton Street Bridge, but we have to exit immediately to our right on the first exit.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Mr. Corbett?
You were heading that direction when Chris asked that question. Now let's talk Jefferson Street, 66 south to north. That's can't be on it.
Nope, that's a state highway, not allowed on Jefferson.
So that
Cross over.
to
cross
get
over.
to Downs,
Pardon me?
you can cross over to get to Downs.
We do not go on Downs.
Can't get to Downs.
Downs is because it's a state
So
highway.
really, the only way to access South Defiance is like Carnes to Cleveland.
Or going the other direction, you'd have to come get on Jackson to get out.
You really
I'm
think
talking
all
about Terrawanda area, how do you get down to Power Dam Road? And I'm asking because I've had no calls, which is kind of unusual, but except one. And he was on Power Dam Road, he's a veteran.
Mm-hmm.
He must haul it from Florida up,
Mm-hmm.
and he's landlocked there. He can't,
That's what I'm talking about.
okay, you can't get him out of there though.
We can cross Clinton Street, or I'm sorry, 111.
And go where? Through the apartment complex to get over to Jackson if we do it, or,
It's just an offset. It's not a direct.
yeah, I know.
It's not direct to go across. It's an offset. And it's the same with me. If I cross Clinton Street at the railroad viaduct, I'm on Clinton Street briefly.
Can we get him out of Huffman Edition?
I don't know.
See, I don't think we can make it perfect for everybody. I just don't.
Well, I don't imagine that we
Yeah,
can, but
yeah.
we can certainly improve upon what we got, I believe.
And again, this started this way because of recommendations from our police chief to keep them off 35 mile an hour roads. So has he changed? He's not here to ask. Has anybody talked to him?
He's on vacation
I
this
know.
week, so.
I wasn't gonna say that because we didn't want people to know he's out of town.
Didn't say he was out of town, we just said he was.
Oh, that's true. Got it. Staycation.
Mr. Waxler?
Yeah, Jackson Street with the whirler trucks and all that, that is just, you're just asking for trouble there. That's gonna be a problem. There's so much traffic on Jackson Street with trucks and whirler and, I mean, it's all day. That's just a bad move.
I've been, my personal experience, I have been down South Jackson to Arts Hardware many times.
So have I. I lived
And
on that
I've
road for many years.
I've never had a problem.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of accidents on Jackson Street in my time, but.
Never had a problem.
Question, Mr. Rusty?
I think it's worth discussing. I'd be willing to make the motion to basically expand on the existing, ordinance that we have, to allow some additional passages around Defiance, for the, vehicles and, go from there.
So we have a motion, but do we have questions first?
Yeah, I wonder, would it be prudent if we put it through the traffic commission first to give our safety personnel the opportunity to at least voice one more opinion? And then have the recommendation come back to council? Mayor's looking at me like he's tired.
No, I'm frankly not even looking at you. It's a council discussion.
No.
Is it prudent to take it to
Let the
traffic commission?
then you
It
have
may well
your
be
safety.
prudent. Mr. Rusty made a motion.
I get it.
have to respect that.
All right, well,
Mr. Hancock?
Two things, I was gonna follow what, I was just gonna ask about, including that in the traffic commission, just to have not only, an additional information, but also possibly a study session, because I don't know how much effective this is from a map standpoint of how this will occur. The other question I had was, do we know how many are currently registered here in the city, as a, low-speed vehicle?
I don't have those numbers with me. That's why I guess to
I mean, it's, are we
Mr.
looking at 100,
Corbin's
are we
point,
looking at?
getting some input from the chief of police, who
Maybe
originally made
Chief
the
Schaefer would
recommendation.
have those
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah.
Right, I'd be curious to know, have some of that information.
Question, Mr. Engel?
Yes, would there be any way we could, ask the police chief, what his recommendation or what he thinks as far as 25, 35, 45, or whatever?
Not 45.
I know, not 45, I'm just saying 25.
I think the recommendation, Mr. Engel, for it to go before traffic commission
Okay,
is a good recommendation.
okay,
That's how I feel.
okay, thanks.
Question, Mr. Mast?
Just a question and statement basically is that, in my opinion, to stick to the original intention of what I thought this was about, wasn't about driving low-speed vehicles all over town and into every neighborhood. It was about connecting locally within your neighborhoods, just down the street, around a couple blocks, not necessarily. I've seen these vehicles personally. There's one on East High. They tend to use the road or the sidewalk, depending on what their mood is. They'll make their way to Pontiac, and then they'll by road, and then they'll go on the sidewalk and drive it around the sidewalks as well. I've already seen them on East Second Street where they're not supposed to be. So the ordinance isn't even being followed as is. So without people understanding, I hate to see it open up any further at this point. People they aren't following the rule now. So if we change it and say 35, they're gonna be everywhere. They're just gonna, they're not gonna read the part about no state highways and anything like that. They're gonna go everywhere. And I guess truthfully, if we had left it alone as it was, we could have gone by the state ordinance and we wouldn't even have to be here talking about it. They could have just said, if you got a vehicle, you take it to the BMV and you get a license plate on it, you follow the state ordinance and you run it on the road up to 35 mile an hour and stay off the highway. But if they brought it to us and we made this ordinance up, so we can consider it, but I can't see expanding it beyond what it currently is.
Thank you. We currently have a motion.
I'd like to respond to Mr. Mast, if I may.
Sure.
I don't think it's fair that myself or any other person that is following the rules and the guidelines be penalized for somebody being stupid. It's not my job to police them. I used my LSV last summer primarily to run errands, mostly in downtown, and I kept track last year. I drove 60 mile just in the downtown running errands, and the errands be the post office, the bank, et cetera, et cetera. And when gas was $5 a gallon, I was just a grinning, leaving that truck set in the garage. So I have been following the ordinance. I can go to Lowe's. I've been to the farmer's market, but I'm following the rules. I keep a copy of the ordinance in my LSV along with a copy of the form from the police department with all the criteria on it that has to be met. So if anybody has a question, I can show them. But I don't want to be penalized for somebody else's stupidity. Driving on a
Unfortunately,
sidewalk, that's
those are the
just
things that we
nuts.
have to take into consideration though, when establishing ordinances like this. If we made the decision to change the rules versus what the state says, then we have to take that into consideration of what is gonna happen locally.
I understand that municipalities can change, and we did with the original ordinance. That was done.
Question, Mr. Waxler?
Yeah, I pulled up some information here today, and this is from it's called X Insurance. And a study by the NICE database shows that since 2017, there's been an increase of 6,500 injuries in golf carts a year.
And where?
All over, just in general.
United States?
Yeah, I mean, 6,500, that's a big number. I mean, maybe you don't think so, but, I just think that we're asking for trouble to start putting these on highways. We're not Florida. This ain't a community where they drive through the golf courses and a community where there's not cars on roads. The golf carts have their low speed vehicles, we're gonna call them, have the right of way. I agree with Mr. Mass, we did what we could do to make it so you could get around, and they're more for going next door or down the road, not running all over town.
Oh, yes, I am. Yes, I am running all over town, and I'm following the ordinance.
So then what's your problem?
I can't go to the South Defiance. I
You
can't.
can if you wanna walk or ride a bike or drive your car.
No, now you're being obnoxious.
Well, with this, we have a motion on the floor. Mr. Uresti?
A couple items here. I did make the motion. But before we even go with that, I can withdraw my motion because there's two other requests that were also made. One was to the Traffic Commission for a recommendation. The other one was for a study session. So instead of going with a motion, my motion to basically expand, what I can do is withdraw that and in favor of a study session, which could be also a recommendation for a traffic study off the study session. If not, then basically it dies with that, whatever happens at the study session.
So you are withdrawing your motion?
I'll withdraw my motion if we want to do a study session.
Mrs. Crutch?
I agree with the study session, as far as the low-speed vehicles and whatever, I personally have no problem with them. I probably have more problems with motorcycles going down the road at faster speeds and going around cars and, I'd like to know what the accidents of motorcycles are in the United States compared to slow-moving vehicles. So, we can go back and forth, weigh the pros and cons of both of those things, but I don't think 35 miles per hour is bad, especially, I know the gentleman that you're talking about, he's called me too, because he can't go from the south side of South Clinton. He goes through the cemetery, and we don't really want them driving through the cemetery for any reason either. So trying to get to Eric's ice cream or whatever, we're having some issues there. So I think a study session would be good. I'd like to hear what Chief Schaefer has to say as far as how many low vehicles we have in Defiance, how many are following the rules, how many have they had to stop. I know which ones you're talking about because I've seen those kids, and it's kids that are on them, and to me, that's the parents' problem, that they haven't been watching the kids. But I've also seen, John Wiener driving his little John Deere around the neighborhood, and he went down to Pontiac Park and, was very good. So, I've seen both.
Study session, make a request.
So we have a motion for study session scheduled for what date? I'm looking at the calendar here. next Tuesday is the 14th, and then the last Tuesday of the month is the 28th.
We still won't have input from Chief Schaefer next week, if you went next week.
So we will go out for, you have a motion for a study session to discuss the ordinance for low-speed vehicles on
Expansion.
March 28th. Here,
And can we have Chief Schaefer here that he
I
would
was
be
going
able
to add
to,
that I will make sure Chief Schaefer is here
Yeah.
for your study session.
so we can hear what he has to say in the community?
7 o'clock?
Yes, 7
All right.
o'clock.
So we have that motion.
Prior to the second of the motion, Mr. Hahn, are you available on March 28th?
At what time?
7 o'clock, March 28th.
I will be here.
So you're seconding the
I'll
motion?
second that motion.
All right.
And also the, fire and rescue.
Will do.
Mr. O'Donnell, our study sessions are usually after legislation. To change the agenda, does he have to publicly announce he's going to change the agenda to start out with a study session?
He can make that the council president can make that determination, and then you can just place it in the agenda at his direction. But it certainly doesn't hurt to announce that.
Yeah, the study session will be up front first.
Okay. I have a motion, I have a second. Mr. Engel,
Yes.
Mr. Corbett,
Yes.
Mr. Hancock.
Yes.
Mr. Rusty.
Yes.
Mr. Mass,
Yes.
Mr. Waxler,
Yes.
and Mrs. Crutch.
Yes.
Then on March 28th at 7 o'clock, we'll have a study session up front at 7 o'clock to discuss our ordinance on low-speed vehicles. There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I have reviewed the index minutes for our city council meeting of February 28th, 2023. Unless there is a motion to amend or the index minutes as written, then I will endorse the same. Do we have any any liaison meeting or requests or reports? Right. And do we have any comments from council? Mr. Corbett?
Just a reminder, it's potholes, and there's a place on our website, report potholes, and I thought I really pulled something off the other day, but I hear the mayor beat me to it. South Jefferson and Downs, and I thought I really got something done, but thanks for fixing that. We gotta say thank you to our street department for staying after it.
Lori and I were taking her mom, my mother-in-law, back to Glen Park, and I observed the pothole. It was late Saturday evening, and I knew getting the pothole repaired, I just want you to understand how things work. And I called into the police department, asked them to put a cone in it so that people would avoid it over the weekend. They did, and Mr. Zedek had it fixed by, I think, 8 o'clock Monday morning or thereabouts. So,
Councilman Corbett, you were a very close second to the message I received.
I'm glad my effort wasn't in
So
vain.
we can call it joint effort if you'd like.
They were out today hot and heavy, going home.
But it is time for them to get after it.
Pothole at cityofdefiance.com works well. Yep.
Mr. Resty?
Mayor McCann, the project that they're doing by Spruce Street, they're, breaking down the cement,
SK Hentel.
almost down to a powder and stuff like that. Can that be used like for alley repair? It seems like it's pretty grinded down, like, you know.
We don't own that.
I won't say yes. Grandma McCann's line, I won't say yes, but I won't say no, just to make Mr. Leonard chuckle a little bit, but it's not our property. It's land bank, it's a land bank project. Although as they crumble it up, there's a magnet that supposedly traps all the steel. I don't think I personally want to do that, Mr. Rusty, because of the remote chance there might be steel in there that could get in, damage a tire, or a barefoot, or something such as that.
Okay.
I did ask the question, that was the answer I was given, and it seems like a reasonable line of thought.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Mast?
I was asked by several people, as just kind of a point of clarification regarding the, projects behind ProMedica, the assisted living facility. People were just curious as to where that, do we have a building site on that or?
They've not
Approximate.
officially brought anything
That's
to,
what I.
so I spoke with them. Sorry, Mr. Mast, I don't think it was yesterday, so it must have been late last week. I spoke with the developer and reminded them that we needed to see them in here for a preliminary meeting. Generally, that meeting is with Mr. Robeson on zoning, obviously Mrs. Brow on engineering, Ms. Warnicki on planning. A lot of times, Mr. O'Donnell might sit in, Mr. Mack or myself. The general location is indeed behind ProMedica, but frankly, it's where you transition sort of from Harding Street to Latchaw on that sharp curve, be more off to the right there as you're traveling around heading back to High Street, if that helps.
So it's safe to say this is a fairly early planning stages?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Thank you.
Mrs. Crutch?
Defiance Visitors Bureau is having their fundraiser right now for the bicentennial, where you could purchase a card and get your name up there. And I know I have seen most of the administration and myself, but she was asking if council members would stop in and try to buy a number also. So I'm saying, council members, go into the DDBB and help with the fundraiser for the bicentennial. And also, this is restaurant week, so go out and eat, which I've been doing, because who wants to cook? So I think that's a great thing. And then this last week was the V-Twin concert at the Strady, which was Friday night, which was absolutely horrible to go out in, but I did. And it was a sold-out concert. It was amazing. The Strady is putting on some really, really, really great concerts, so hopefully you can check into those too. So,
thank you.
So I have.
Mr. Hancock?
And I had a question recently in regards to when the implementation of the Whirler recyclable containers are going to be.
I believe when they were here and presented us, they said mid-year.
Okay.
June, July.
Mr. Hancock, I anticipate bringing some legislation at our next meeting, and I was in contact with Mr. Coburn about that today, actually. So you can look forward to that on the 28th.
Thank you. Or 14th.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I meant the 28th. Yep.
Thank you.
Without any other questions, Mayor McCann?
Thank you. So today, Jake Lambert from IT, Adam McDowell from Water, and Assistant Police Chief Lee Martinez and I went to lunch at Pancake House. Had a very good lunch, and I plan on taking members of our city staff to lunch every day this week at my expense, Mr. Waxler.
I didn't. That could be the next question.
Good for you.
Waiting for that, man.
You can't go along.
Are we part of the city?
Lori and I had dinner at Bud's tonight. They were very busy and had lots of yummy looking pie, but none of which is on my diet. So my grilled chicken salad was yummy. And other than that, I'd like to thank Miss Elders twice here in the last week or so. We've been a little shorthanded at our front desk, and she's been up to the task. And I appreciate it. We all appreciate it. All right, and that's all I have, sir.
Well, thank you. Mr. Mack?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. First off, I'd like to apologize to Councilwoman Crutch. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to say that, yes, I will make sure the Chief of Police is here. So I apologize for that interruption. Secondly, good news on Kingsbury Park. It is, as of 2 p.m. was reopened. The flooding had been taken care of. Our crews, the Parks Department, along with the Fire Department, put a lot of work in already, starting to get stuff cleaned up out there. What people will notice as they go back, as they return to the now reopened park, is it's missing a lot of equipment. Part of that missing equipment has been sold off, and now we're starting to make way for the project we all know is coming this summer. which is kind of the revamping of Kingsbury Park. So that you'll see some cement pads being poured, weather dependent, in the next few months that will lead to the buildup of the actual installation of the equipment. So just wanted to make council aware of that. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. O'Donnell.
I have nothing at this time, Mr. President.
Ms. Sprague.
I also have nothing as far as purchase orders, but I did want to let you know, last week, Ryan and I did go down to the fire department and I met with their staff, got a tour of the building, their living quarters, where they hang out, EMS, fire trucks, gosh, everything.
Yeah, you got a great tour.
Got a great tour, spent some time with the chief. He wants me to come back and we're gonna go through his budget line by line, which I'm more than happy to do. So that was good. I mean, just how you get to know how things work. And then we still need to meet with, we've got one.
Water pollution control.
Water pollution control.
Yes.
And then I'll have made my first rounds, so. And sat through a meeting yesterday on the IWIP. That was very good, very informational, so. Every day is just something new and exciting. That's all I have.
Thank you. We do have 4 items of legislation for consideration this evening. Ms. Elders, would you read the caption for the first?
Second reading by caption only. An ordinance vacating the right-of-way between 49 and 50, 51 and 52, and 61 through 64 of the Williamstown Addition, portions of Broadway Avenue and Ralston Avenue, and between Lot 42 of Holgate Addition to North Defiance and Lot 16 in the Auditor's Plat of lots north of the Maumee River.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. President. This property surrounding these rights-of-way is owned by ARPS Dairy Incorporated. And ARPS has applied to vacate these 5 different rights-of-way. As we spoke last meeting, section 905.19 of our codified ordinances is the applicable law here. The city engineer has reviewed these 5 rights-of-way and determined the absence of any public utilities that would give cause for concern, any public utilities at all for that matter. The City Planning Commission met on February 21st and voted to recommend vacation of all of them to you. And so now it's up to you to determine whether there is good cause to vacate them. And again, I would note 905.19A4 requires 3 full readings. This would be reading number 2 of 3. Therefore, should you choose to advance this legislation and adhere to Planning Commission's recommendation, a motion to let consideration of the bill lie would be our recommendation.
Do we have any questions in these regards? Mr. Engel?
Motion to let lie.
We have a motion to let lie.
Second.
Second, Mr. Mast. All those in favor of letting this issue lie until we convene again, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, we will bring it back to consideration next week.
First reading by caption only, an ordinance amending section 147.02 of the codified ordinances of the city of Defiance, Ohio.
Mr. Mack.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So both the chief of police and the fire chief and HR director are recommending this codified ordinance be changed, along with the Board of Control having discussed some of it. We're asking that the age limit be bumped to the age of 40. That would be up from 37. That would be for new people we are bringing into the city for both fire and police. We along with those people listed, already listed, this will allow for recruitment of and lateral transfers of a little bit higher age to come over. The ability to bring in retired military, which we think could be a huge benefit, especially on the side of the police force, and get a little bit more experience and maturity from some of the new applicants that we could have coming in. This is something that is taking place all around us. Other communities are switching and moving up to the age of 40. So.
Thank you. Mr. Rusty.
No further questions, motion to suspend and call.
So we have a motion to suspend and call. Mr. Rusty, second. Mr. Waxler.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
And Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Motion to adopt, Mr. Corbett.
Second.
Second, Mr. Mast.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
And Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
With that, this ordinance is adopted.
First reading by caption only, an ordinance amending section 151.02 of the codified ordinances of Defiance, Ohio.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we discussed last week, the combination of the rate of inflation and the escalating costs of our day-to-day operational type expenses are beginning to eclipse that in excess of $25,000 threshold for us to bring an ordinance to you as city council. We're seeing that in a lot of that inflation combined with a labor shortage that seems to be particularly acute here in Northwest Ohio. We're seeing that in, I think Mr. Uresty's mentioned fewer bidders. Is another way that's manifesting itself. And these factors are driving the cost up. And just to reiterate some recent anecdotes, but there are many more. You recently approved a contract for the purchase of engineering survey equipment at the tune of a little over $32,000 last, maybe 2 meetings ago. And the prior purchase for that similar equipment was $12,000 about 10 years ago. So that shows you how much things have increased. And then last summer, of course, we received the roof replacement quote for the Armory building at around $28,000. And just last week, you approved the ordinance for over $60,000. And so admittedly, not every expenditure has this stark a difference, but virtually every capital project that involves any kind of construction labor, we're seeing these large increases, well over $50,000. So this ordinance increases that threshold for legislative approval from in excess of $25,000 to in excess of $50,000. That's all it does. It keeps in place the separate requirement that we bring any vehicle purchase to you for council approval, as well as report on any expenditure in excess of $15,000 in council meetings to the public. I will note that this proposed threshold is the same that the Ohio Revised Code sets forth for all villages and statutory cities, in other words, cities without a charter, in section 735.05. The city of Napoleon recently increased its own threshold to that amount about a month ago. And we're not asking for any quick movement on this. It's a non-emergency ordinance, just asking for your consideration and deliberation. And I understand Ms. Sprague might have a few things to add.
I just wanted to add that you can always, I always report 15,000, on the sheet that I'm given, and you can always question any of that, and I can always get more detail to provide to you, if you want that. But this would just keep us moving for the day-to-day expenses of things we need to operate. The gas bill, for example, that has a 2-week turnaround, and there's times that, depending on that dollar amount, which has went up, that bill gets sent out to all the divisions, and Mandy waits on that to get returned back to her to okay to pay. So sometimes if there's a lag in days, and then if we would have to bring it, it just tacks on more days, and those are daily operations of running everything around us. So that's how I think that's how I'm looking at it, is it just keeps us moving, but you can always email, call, if you have a specific question about an item with an expense.
Question, Mr. Mast?
No, I just want to state that I don't necessarily have a problem with raising this expenditure threshold. I do have a problem, I think, with doubling it currently. I would rather see it in the 35,000 range. If you factor in inflation, like you said, you punch 25,000 into any inflation calculator on the internet and it still doesn't hit 30. I understand products more expensive, chemicals especially, I've seen, I know, a huge raise.
Yeah.
But it just, and I know we have expenditure, you come and report them, but that gives us an illusion of transparency where that's a foregone conclusion, once you come and bring it to us, and that 50,000 just seems like it's up there. Where without a safety rope, when you come and, once we find out, once the newspaper finds out, once people find out, it's gone without a safety rope. I mean, so I'd feel better in the 35,000 range to bring it down, but that's just my opinion.
Mr. Rusty?
I don't have any problem with this legislation. I think it's something that's needed. The other part also is the reason why this is being presented to us in the previous increment, along with this, is a question of trust. And I don't think we've had any problem with the last increase. We've had reporting. We've been able to basically follow it. And I've not heard of anything that we've dealt with here on council as a result of the reportings of some of the expenditures. And I don't foresee that again with the passage of this. I think it's good legislation. I support this.
Thank you. Other comments from council or questions?
I'd like to ask a question.
Sure.
Based on what you just said, we haven't had much discussion. I didn't know you were gonna read that last part. Are you saying like the Village of Nay has a $50,000 spending limit?
That's correct. Because they're villages.
Right.
They have to abide by Ohio Revised Code,
Right,
whatever.
Sherwood?
I would assume so, yeah.
You know what Brian is by chance?
I do not.
Okay.
I gotta find out.
You
but I-
said that, I was just curious.
Yeah.
Mr.
Villages
Rusty?
can't say.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And thank you for your comments.
No other questions, motion to suspend and call.
We have a motion to suspend and call, Mr. Rusty.
Second.
Second, Mrs. Crutch.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
And Mr. Mass?
No. Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt, Mr. Corbett.
Second.
Second, Mr. Rusty.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Mass?
No.
And Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
With that, this ordinance is adopted.
First reading by caption only, an ordinance adopting the Defiance County 2022 Hazard Mitigation Program.
Mr. Mack.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the full 266-page Defiance County Hazard Mitigation Plan is in your Dropbox for review. You, along with the councils of Nay, Sherwood, and Hicksville, are being asked to approve this update to the previous countywide plan. I also have a hard copy here. If anybody prefers hard copy, it'll be in my office at 266 pages. You can come look through it anytime. The update includes new maps, community profiles, historic data on weather hazards, and new mitigation strategies. This document contains information on hazards ranging from the emerald ash borer to fault line occurrences throughout northwest Ohio. The Defiance County EMA is seeking your approval to ensure that we as a city will be able to qualify for future hazard mitigation grants like the FEMA floodplain grants that we've used to clear out areas along the rivers. So that's why we would move this on and ask that you pass the plan as well.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Mack? Mr. Hancock.
Were you able to read all that?
I haven't quite gotten through all of the new stuff.
Almost.
Yet. Yeah, we're getting there.
I wanted it next, but if you want it, you can have it.
No further discussion, motion has been called.
Motion to suspend and call, Mr. Hancock.
Second.
Second, Mr. Mast.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
And Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Motion adopted.
Motion to adopt, Mr. Engel.
Second.
Second, Mrs. Crutch.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
And Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
With that, this final item of legislation for this evening is adopted.
I will say, President McMaster, we have a great team out there at the EMA led by Julie Rittenhouse and Mr. Mack. When he was commissioner, worked with them and would concur.
Yes, yeah.
Good to hear.
It takes a year to rewrite this plan. it's a lot of work that goes into it for all those people.
Before we adjourn for this evening, are there any citizens' concerns that?
Just one more comment. Didn't take long to get the answer. We have an interested party on YouTube. It's $50,000, is Brian.
Oh, all right, thank you. Tell Mayor Slade, give her our thanks.
Yeah, tell her I said hi.
They're in good hands. All right, without any citizens' concerns, do we have a motion to adjourn for this evening? Mr. Engel, second. All those in favor of adjourning for this evening, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, we will see you next week.
Anybody